Hi, right folks, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to talk about this here. As I say, there's a lot of hysteria right now about what's going on in Ukraine. I don't support any of this hysteria. You know, the West was given plenty of opportunities, especially over the last 6 weeks. Over the last 6 weeks, remember, the Russians, okay, have been asking, practically begging, for legal guarantees that they will not be attacked. Guarantees that are legal, that means that they will not be attacked by NATO. And they're also saying things like, adding to that, we don't really want Ukraine to be part of NATO. Now, from my perspective, the first I kind of noticed something was up was when it became obvious that the Russians were in fact moving military hardware and resources very close to Ukraine's borders, 150 kilometres away it is, right? That's where they were situated. Now, that's not their normal positions, and they were moved there. And then, right after that, when the world started complaining about that, which they don't have any right to do, because Russia can move its troops anywhere it likes, just like the Royal Air Force can fly anywhere it's like in Britain. We can't say, the Scots can't say to the Royal Air Force, don't fly air Scotland, mate. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll do what we want to do, right? So, not the best example, but you know what? I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. For months they had been asking for these guarantees, and nobody was doing anything about it. You know, there was all sorts of meetings between heads of state and foreign ministers, and the German Chancellor went to speak to President Putin, and the French President Macron, he went to speak to President Putin, and nothing happened. They're all jumping about and all the rest of it, right? And for 6 weeks, America was just saying things like Russia's going to invade. It's going to invade on the 12th of January. No, it's the 22nd of January. Well, it might be February. And they kept poking the bear. And all along, in order to provoke the Russians, the Americans have been telling the Ukrainians, well, see all the weapons we've just sent you. Start moving up towards the border of the Donbass, the place that you've signed a treaty, the place that you signed a ceasefire agreement. Just start shelling them, and all the weapons that the British sent over, get them closer as well, because we might be able to kill Russians. So the Americans sent weapons to kill Russian soldiers. The British sent weapons to kill Russian soldiers. Remember that. We're British. I didn't authorise anybody to send weapons to kill Russian soldiers, right? But that's what they've done in your name. And the Russian soldiers know that. So they'll be quite keen in finding British soldiers somewhere and American soldiers somewhere. You see that? That's called payback. That's how it happens. You know, Biden recently fired a missile from a drone that killed 6 kids and some adults. See, the relatives of these kids, they want payback. You kill children in Syria, nearly 10 members of that family will take up arms against you. Right? If somebody kills anybody in my family, I will want revenge against the people that done it. That's natural. In fact, authorities use that in times of war and propaganda. Look, they bombed us, let's get them. But when they bomb them, they say, oh no, they're terrorists. They're fighting back. So they're enemies. They're terrorists. So it's up to you, the listener, to think for yourself. We're no longer in the times of Serbia. Do you remember Serbia? Milosevic and all that. Do you remember they made that guy out to be the devil because he didn't agree with whatever, and they deliberately bombed the so-called NATO defence alliance bombed the shit out of Serbia. Let's blow up their bridges. Let's blow up their power stations. You didn't hear, like, she's complaining, and she complains and talks about the territorial integrity of the Ukraine, that these areas of Ukraine have absolutely no right to self-determination. Well, is she a bit of a hypocrite? Because that's what the English say about the Scots. You don't have any right to self-determination. If you remember Serbia, one of the things that came out of that was Kosovo. So a chunk of land suddenly declared itself sovereign. Right? Kosovo. It didn't exist before. Kosovo. And France went, yeah, we recognise your sovereignty. So, you can do it, but you can't do it. I mean, what does that mean? What about this then? Territorial integrity. What about Turkey? Turkey invaded Cyprus. It's got half of Cyprus, hasn't it? 40%, 30% of Cyprus. I didn't see any sanctions on Turkey. Oh no, don't talk about that. You see, these people are hypocrites. They have got an agenda. And you need to see that agenda. You need to open your eyes to that agenda. She has an agenda. She sees something for herself in saying these things. We thankfully don't have the English army at our door firing howitzers and shells into the homes of our people. But that's the case in these areas in the Donbass. The Ukrainian Defence Force are firing shells into the homes of people living in these areas. Remember, in these areas, there's millions of Russian-speaking, Russian passport, dual citizens of Russia in these areas. And how did that happen? Well, when the Ukrainians took over Ukraine, when the gangsters took over Ukraine, right, at the prodding and organisation of the American intelligence agencies, when they took over, one of the first things they done was ban Russian. They held the MPs and the Parliament at gunpoint and made them pass the law banning it for the schools and all the rest of it. So that kind of tells you what they had in store for Russian speaking and Russian people with Russian heritage in Ukraine. So is it any wonder that maybe say 4 million Ukrainians in the eastern part of Ukraine said, oh no, hold on a minute, we're not having that, we don't agree with this, we want our own government here, we don't support this, we're Russian speaking people, we've got family, we've got a heritage to Russia. These are the facts. But no, she doesn't appreciate that. This is a woman that wants to bring in millions of immigrants into Scotland. She wants to completely dilute Scottish culture. She doesn't care about Scottish culture. Deep down, she wants to fill this land with immigrants. This is your home. That's one of her favourite phrases. This is your home. But they're an illegal immigrant. This is their home. But they don't pay tax. This is their home. Instead of her 6 weeks ago saying, or getting herself into the spotlight and saying, look, taking a chance, going against the grain and saying, look, it looks to me like these people are really suffering. And can we not have the Ukrainian government abide by the treaty that it signed? They signed a treaty called the Minsk Agreement. I believe Minsk is in Belarus, right? They went there, neutral territory, at the behest of the French and the Germans, and they agreed to a ceasefire years ago on that area, and they said that they wouldn't invade. And another thing they said they would do is they said that they would then communicate with the leaders of the Lugansk and Donetsk regions in the Donbass and come to some sort of arrangement. But they never ever done that, because it was obvious they only signed it because the French said that if you don't sign it, we're not giving you billions of this, and you're not getting these loans for the EU. Because the corruption and the hierarchy of the Ukrainian government is immense, right? And they have filtered out all this money. It's not going to the Ukrainian people. So they took the money. Once the money was in, they went, we're not doing anything about that. So that agreement's just sat there. So the Russians have been begging and asking for this agreement to take place, which would have meant they don't need to come in, because it would be a legal agreement and that things would be okay. Just like they're asking for the legal agreement that you're not going to attack. When they see the troops and they see the shelling going on and they hear about the stories, 68,000 refugees flooded into Russia. No, you don't hear her talking about that. All you hear is her getting on the bandwagon talking about territorial integrity and they don't deserve independence. What a hypocrite. What a degenerate hypocrite. Goes on about President Putin. You know, another thing they talk about is, I was in a KGB and all that. Aye. Well, so was a lot of people. But what did they do in the KGB? Well, he wasn't like an agent, a secret agent or anything like that. He was a lawyer in East Germany. Speaks English, fluent German, and Russian, probably French as well. He's a graduate, a university graduate. Now, let's not beat about the bush. In order to control the maniacs that are running about Russia, to wrest control of his country back, he had to be ruthless. So no doubt he's been ruthless. No doubt he has done things in order to maintain power. But so does a lot of people. So is nearly every single president and every single prime minister of this country. Do you think we're not doing shit? Are you joking? Do you think what did we do to the people in Ireland, some of the suspected terrorists, the IRA or whatever? We had shoot to kill policies and all that. You know, our hands are not clean. So, you know, what right have we got to blame anybody else? The Russians are very concerned about Ukraine. You know, if she knew anything about history, if she took into account anything about history, she would know that Napoleon went straight through Ukraine and Belarus towards Moscow. She would know that the British annexed Crimea during the Crimean War. She would know that Operation Barbarossa in 1941, June 1941, that invaded the Ukraine, killing millions of Ukrainians, by the way, killing millions of Ukrainians in the process, was done through Ukraine to get to Russia. So she would then maybe appreciate the way the Russian people and the Russian leadership view the Ukraine. But no, she doesn't want to look at history because she just wants to flood Scotland with illegal immigrants. She doesn't want to take into consideration, you know, that the Clyde Basin has got nuclear weapons in it. Less than 30 miles from where I sit, from where I'm sitting right now, there's nuclear weapons in a place called Glen Douglas. And Glen Douglas just sits above a place called Fast Lane, and that is where the nuclear submarine base is in Scotland. And in the hills above that in Glen Douglas, there are nuclear weapons there. So that means that that's a target of the Federation of Russia. My family, myself and my family, will be obliterated if Ukraine was part of NATO and Ukraine attacked Crimea. Very quickly, the West would be the ones that use the nuclear weapons option first. They know that. That's why they've surrounded Russian borders with nuclear weapons. They know the power of Russia. So in order to quickly nullify them, they've tried to creep up as close as possible to stop the command and control of Russia firing nuclear weapons to the American continent. That's what it's about, you know. It's not about what happens here. It's about the American continent not being struck by ICBMs. I mean, let's be clear about it. That's the agenda of America and NATO. Keep the war in Europe. They are stoking up stuff here and they say there may be a war in Europe. They're not saying there's going to be a war and we might be struck. They're just saying there might be a war in Europe. Because they believe it can be contained in Europe. But it can't be contained in Europe. The pressure on the Russians to strike the mainland of the US would be immense. Because Russia know and have publicly stated yesterday in a meeting in the Duma, in a meeting at the presidential palace, they know that it's America that's behind it all. They know that it's America behind the terrorism in the world, around Al-Qaeda and the proxy wars that they've started in the likes of Syria. I mean, remember, people talk about occupying sovereign territory, don't they? Well, America is actually at this moment occupying parts of Syria. Syria didn't invite them in. What parts of Syria are they occupying? Well, America's occupying the oil fields of Syria. What right have they got to be in that area stealing the oil? That's what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with people that care about us. As I'll repeat to you, they have sent weapons to kill Russian soldiers. Britain has sent weapons, and she supports it, to kill Russian soldiers. So Russian soldiers and the Russian military will be looking to kill British soldiers and American soldiers. That's a fact. That's reality. And that's where we find ourselves, with hypocrites like that screams for independence, but at the same time can talk about other people not getting independence. No, you can't do that. I'm not having that. I don't recognise your independence, even though you're being shelled day and night, even though the people on your doorstep want to commit genocide on you. Because as I said, the very first thing they did when they took over was hold the MPs at gunpoint and make them sign a law that banned Russian in the shops, the schools and everywhere else. The Azov battalions, you know, they're a sort of... There's a lot of bad stuff happened in Ukraine. The Russians killed, the Germans killed a lot of Ukrainian people, but they also found quite a lot of Ukrainians supported the Nazis because they were anti-Russian, just like the people that have taken over now are anti-Russian. That was the same back then, you know, and they willingly joined the SS. Do you know some of the most evil guards in some of the most evil concentration camps were Ukrainian guards? You know, there was hundreds of thousands of Jewish people killed in Ukraine by Ukrainians. She supports that. She must know the history. She must know the history. You cannot say the things she said without doing your research. I'm just a wee guy with a YouTube channel in my living room, and I know the history. So she knows the history. That Bampot behind her there with the disgusting looking mask, he must know the history. He doesn't care. So that's the situation, that's the reality, that's my opinion. If you like the content, hit the like button, share and subscribe, because that's all I've got to say about that. Peace out.
How dare you!